Hello. This week, Shabbos Parsha Vaera, it says in the Parsha, Hen b'nei Yisrael lo yishamu alai. Yes, the children of Israel didn't listen to me. Moshe Rabbeinu complains that he's given them all this message, but they won't accept the message. What are you supposed to do? It once happened that Rabbi Yisrael Levizhnitz, who was accustomed to every evening to take a stroll for half an hour or so with his gabbai, he once passed a bank manager's house, and the bank manager was a maskil, an enlightened Jew, not exactly a chassid. And the Rebbe turned aside and knocked on the door. A servant opened the door, let them in. The Rebbe sat in the proffered chair and didn't say anything. After a while, the host quietly asked the gabbai what the Rebbe was here for. And the gabbai said, I really don't know either. I'm as confused as you are. After a while, without saying a word, the Rebbe got up and left. Made his greetings, started leaving, as is the custom among Jewish people. The bank manager was escorting the Rebbe out, but he didn't just go daled amos, 4 cubits, as is the general custom, but he continued walking, curious as to why the Rebbe had visited. Finally, they had almost reached the Rebbe's house. The bank manager said, excuse me, but I'm confused. Why did the Rebbe come to visit me? And the Rebbe said, to fulfill a mitzvah of the Chachamim. The Chachamim said, just like there's a mitzvah to say something that will be heard, there's a mitzvah not to say something that won't be heard. And I knew about something that concerned you, that you wouldn't listen to. But if I stay in my house and you stay in your house, that's not really performing the mitzvah. So I have to come to your house to not say anything. And the bank manager says, but Rebbe, how do you know I won't do it? The Rebbe goes, I know. They go back and forth. The Rebbe is insistent that he won't give up his mitzvah of not saying something that will not be heard. And the bank manager insists, how do you know I won't do it if you won't tell me what it is that won't be heard? After a while, the Rebbe finally agrees. He says, well, there's this widow that her mortgage is due and overdue. And in the next few days, the bank is going to repossess and sell off her house, and she'll be out on the street. And so the mitzvah is to tell you, or refrain from telling you, that you should, not foreclose on this mortgage. The bank manager says, but Rebbe, I'm only the manager of the bank. I'm not the owner of the bank. The money isn't owed to me. My job is to do what's best for the owners of the bank. How can I forgive this? And the Rebbe says, you see, I told you before I said anything, I would have had a mitzvah of not saying something that wouldn't be listened to. And they departed with this. But the words of the Rebbe bothered the bank manager greatly. And before the woman's house would be repossessed, he paid off the mortgage out of his own funds. Now, there are many, many versions of this story with several different Rebbes. And sometimes it's a chassid, sometimes it's a bank manager, different versions. But a question about all of them, the Rebbe obviously knows that this is going to yield relief for the widow. I don't believe that he was just going to perform the mitzvah of not being listened to, or not saying that which wouldn't be listened to. The Rebbe clearly wanted to do it in a way that would be listened to. When thinking about this, when you're looking at perceptions and how to observe things and how to see things and how to speak about things, I'm reminded of the Ibn Ezra's commentary on the 2 prostitutes that come before Shlomo HaMelech. Now, the way people recount the story commonly, Shaliach Hai Shalach HaMes, Lo Shaliach Hai Shalach HaMes. No, mine is the living son, yours is the dead son. No, mine is the living son, yours is the dead son, is the complaints of the two women. If you look inside, that's not what they say. The first woman says, Shaliach Hai Shalach HaMes. My son is the living son, your son is the dead son. And the other woman says, Shalach HaMes Shaliach Hai. That your son is the dead son, and my son is the living son. And the Ibn Ezra there says an interesting comment. How does Shlomo Melech know who is the real mother and what's going on with the sword and so on? He knew before the thing. The Ibn Ezra says a woman always refers to her son first. So when the one woman says, Shalach HaMes Shaliach Hai, in fact, when she's saying Shalach, your son is the dead one, she's always, her child is always first in her mind. So she's admitting, so to speak, that her child is the dead son, and the other woman's child is the live son. So too the Rebbe is able to perceive through his knowledge of this person, his context with this person in the past, what kind of thing will stir his soul, will confuse his soul, will create a situation where in fact he will come out with it stuck himself. And I've even heard versions of the story where the bank manager is, of course, a maskil, and because mitzvah goreres, mitzvah, one mitzvah pulls in its wake another mitzvah, the mitzvah of giving this tzedakah to help the widow, which is in many ways a double mitzvah, allows him to go on to perform many more mitzvahs and eventually be choser b'tshuva. But even without that, each mitzvah stands in its own. Each mitzvah is important. Each helping for another person is very, very great and doesn't have to be measured on its own. Everyone should have a very good Shabbos.